hello. It is the Go Birds podcast, the unexpected Friday afternoon emergency Go Birds podcast where Elliot Short Parks is on vacation. How you doing, Tucker?
I'm doing great. Nothing. It's a beautiful day outside. The Masters is on TV. I spent the afternoon hanging out in my backyard, but I'm really excited to come down and sit in my basement and talk about Eagles football with you.
It's a beautiful thing. Not quite on vacation, but Elliot, very funny. He is lamenting the fact that he just left for, where he is this weekend. We don't have the show tomorrow because the Phillies, and he took the weekend, and he's like, I can't believe this is happening to me. You know how this kills Elliot. You'll hear Elliot's thoughts on this, but look, let's dive in because, quick emergency pod. Let's get it out. Let's get it to the people because it's Eagles trade for a receiver. And it's not like a big, huge deal. A fifth and a sixth rounder, a fifth this year, a sixth next year for Dantavyon Wicks from the Packers. But it is like a guy we've heard of, a guy we've played against, a guy who's played in the NFL for a few years, has had some moments. We'll get into him as a player, what we think he could be. But the Eagles traded for him, gave him a guaranteed contract for next year. We don't know what the numbers will actually be, but I believe up to $12.5 million, which I'm sure it won't quite get there. But, we'll get to the AJ Brown thing, but I think just to not look, they didn't give up a ton of capital. I don't think this is necessarily like their only thing they'll do. They could still draft one, they could still trade for another, whatever. But I think we keep seeing they're throwing some darts on guys who have experience and guys who have, done something in the NFL who maybe they feel are undervalued assets. And I also have to think, Tucker, last thing I'll say, Sean Mannion, I'm guessing, had something to do with this after having been with him the last couple of years. So, they're betting on Sean Mannion. I doubt they would trade for Dantavyon Wicks if Sean Mannion weren't either pushing for it or at the least, a fan of it. So your thoughts, the Dantavyon Wicks trade?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. You mentioned the AJ Brown thing. I think that's kind of the bigger angle. This is yet another kind of hint as to where this is heading, whether or not it's 2 weeks.
Well, when you texted, you're like, well, AJ's gone. I'm like, what happened? I didn't even know the Wicks trade. You didn't lead with the Eagles traded for Dantavyon Wicks. You led with, well, I guess AJ's gone, That's
how you pique someone's interest. That's how you get people excited. Right. If I had just texted Dantavyon Wicks trade, we would be doing a pod right now. But, when you look at kind of what they've done with Elijah Moore, with Hollywood Brown, and with Dantavyon Wicks, you're right. I mean, they're just kind of throwing darts at the dartboard for guys who are either maybe distressed assets who haven't necessarily performed to their highest level, or someone like Dantavyon Wicks, who's only 25 years old. He's only played 3 years in the NFL. He's on his last year of his rookie contract. Like you say, he's going to make about $3 million this year. And he's had moments. Like he had 97 yards this year on Thanksgiving. And then he just didn't have a catch the rest of the season. I think he had 5 catches the last 4 games of the year. And I look at kind of the situation he was in Green Bay. And if you look at the situation where the Eagles might be with AJ Brown gone and Devontae Smith kind of being the number one receiver, they're pretty similar wide receiver rooms. Now, the Eagles are going to be a little bit older because the Packers have so many young receivers.
Yeah, they were all young guys there.
But the idea of, you have maybe a number one receiver.
Devontae's better than Christian Watson if he's the number one.
Or Jaden Reed, or whoever you want to say is there.
That's the thing is with them, I feel like it was really flat across that group,
Right, and now he kind of ends up in a situation where, maybe Sean Mannion or the Eagles looked at it and said, well, in Green Bay, he only averaged, I think, 300 yards per year, but he was in a really crowded wide receiver room, right? He was, competing for targets with all these guys. And now you kind of look at it and he's in a similar situation with the Eagles, where I know obviously you had to replace Jahan Dotson and you had to kind of upgrade your wide receiver 3. But, after the first move, when you went out and traded for Hollywood Brown or signed Hollywood Brown, it was like, okay, well, he could be your wide receiver 3. And then you add Elijah Moore and it's like, well, okay, maybe he could be your wide receiver 3. And now that you add Dantavyon Wicks, like you have 3 guys who, at the very least, are a huge upgrade over that number 3 spot. But based on how the Eagles have built their roster under Howie Roseman, I don't think these are wide receivers 3, 4, and 5 on the depth chart. It's kind of obvious that there's going to be another move made, and I think we all know what it is.
Yeah, I agree. I think that, and look, I think they might be 3, 4, 5 on the depth chart if they draft someone in the first round, which I still think is a high possibility, or even a second rounder. Maybe they're 3, 5, or 4, 5, and 3, 5, and 6. Who knows how it all plays out? And look, Elijah Moore has had injury issues. Holly Brown's had injury issues. Like these guys, and Wicks hasn't been on the field his entire career. Here's what I can say to your point about Wicks doing stuff, just from an anecdotal perspective. We don't watch the Packers every week. we've seen the Eagles play the Packers quite a few times and in some big spots the last couple years. And look, we all play fantasy. We all gamble. Like, we watch the national games on. So we've gotten a feel for the Packers, a pretty good feel, because they've been a good team and they've been on TV a lot the 3 years of Dantavyon Wicks' career to this point. But, we don't watch them every day, and we don't know the ins and outs like we do with the Eagles players, like we always do. What I can say is, anecdotally, I always feel like he does stuff. I always feel like I'm watching a Packers game and there's Dantavyon Wicks with 2 touchdowns, or he's in the end zone or whatever, the other part of that is what you were talking about, where whenever I watch the Packers, I'm just like, well, who's it going to be this time? It seems like Christian Watson kind of would stand out the most because he had the most specific skill set as the tall, fast guy, and they would, get a connection here and there. But look, Dub's got a bunch of money based on what he did there, which was kind of like a possession guy, like classic number 2, maybe. Reed can't stay on the field, but when he is, he's, flying all over. It was such an interesting thing. And I think that offense, is potentially a sign of what we're going to see here, and potentially a sign with these moves of getting guys who, like, not just raising the floor for your third wide receiver, but your fourth and fifth, like having guys where you can put 5 wides out there or put 4 out there. And like, theoretically, as Jalen learns the offense, like, Jalen can survey the field and say, who's open? I can throw it to Elijah Moore because he's good. I can throw it to Tommy Brown because he's good. Good enough, better than those. And that's what the Packers offense has felt like, where it's like, all right, who's the open guy? Let me throw to it. We got all these dudes. In one game, it's Sharon Reed's game. One game, it's Christian Watson's game, this and that, So I think it's an interesting, you're right. He's kind of coming potentially to a similar thing. It is interesting that they're all more or less, Dantavyon Wicks maybe a little bigger than Elijah Moore, but Brown, but like kind of similar. They're all kind of the smaller, faster, undersized kind of guys, which is interesting because Devontae, similar, a little taller, but, similar. I think Wicks is like 6'1", so he's like similar size. He's obviously bigger, but like, it's not AJ. It's not that 6'3" big body guy, even 6'2" big, whatever. So I do think that, and again, Mannion coming from there and LaFleur and McVay, all this stuff, like, I do think that idea of having like multiple receivers out on multiple plays that you trust throwing to any of them is like potentially a goal for this offense. You know what I mean? And again, hoping that one of these guys takes a step. Dantavyon, can you be a 2 in this or whatever? You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think, what's kind of interesting is, you talk about, who he's not necessarily an AJ Brown replacement. His longest career reception is 35 yards. Like, he's not a game breaker. He's not a guy who's going to go over the top and beat you with a 75-yard catch. But, as we were talking there, I was kind of looking at the target distribution for the Green Bay Packers last year. And Romeo Doubs did have the most. He had 85. But then Christian Watson had 55 targets. Dantavyon Wicks had 46. Tucker Kraft, Matthew Golden, and Josh Jacobs all had 44. Like, you had 5 guys. And that offense would, 40 to 50 targets.
Would have been higher, but and
yeah, he only played 8 games, and they had to bring in Musgrave.
Kraft kind of emerged last year as like, whoa, look at this dude. But yeah, it's interesting and I felt like, to the point I made, I feel like you could watch any game and any of these guys could step up. I felt like it could be a Wicks game, it could be a Reed game, it could be a Watson game, and that is dangerous. Like, theoretically, like, from, if we strip out names and titles and this and that, like on a basic level, like, it's kind of like a pitcher in baseball. David Cohn always said, and it's a great, and it's not, rocket science, but a great way to put it is like, a pitcher's best pitch is mystery. Like, that's his best pitch, is that whatever the pitch is, what it is, and the hitter doesn't. And it's kind of a similar theoretical, philosophical concept of like, if you've got a bunch of guys on a play and you don't know who to shade your coverage, who to this or that, like, and you're obviously going to, Devontae's better. So you're going to, but the point being that they really will spread it around, throw it to different guys and move the ball around. Like, that can be such a dangerous thing from a philosophical perspective. Like, that's what you want. You want an offense where everyone, it's open guy gets the ball and they can make a play, And so I like where their head is at. We don't know if Jalen can execute it. Like, I am, bullish on him. Obviously others aren't, but I do think I think that they are telling us what they want the offense to look like with the moves that they're making a little bit.
Yeah, and I think it's another indication that, Sean Mannion is putting his stamp on his thing. on the offense.
But
for
him, like he should. It's not a problem.
It is, but I look at it on the other side, and the other person who kind of has to buy into this is Jalen Hurts, and this isn't an anti-Jalen Hurts thing, but the Eagles have tried to bring in more weapons on offense, and they have, right? Like they've built a pretty big, arsenal of weapons in the past.
And I'm sure Howie was not expecting I bet you if you told him the total number of career targets Sean Dotson got as an Eagle, Howie would have guessed it was triple that or something,
I'm sure he wasn't expecting him to have 18 catches last year. But, if your whole goal is spreading around the ball on offense, that's not something Jalen Hurts has ever done, right? Like, even his rookie year, I'll have to go back and kind of see that. But, I mean, last year, A.J. Brown had 121 targets. Devontae Smith had 113, and then Goddard had 82, right? And that's kind of what he's done. He did the similar thing in 24, 23, even back to 22. Like, they had two high-volume receivers at the top of their depth chart, and he went after them. Like, on the other side of the spectrum, it's Donovan McNabb, who in his career seemed to have, 5 or 6 games every year where it's all man. He completed a pass to 8 different receivers. That's never really been Jalen Hurts, whether that's been the design of the offense, whether that's been what he's comfortable with, what his progressions are. Like, we don't necessarily know what the intent is or what he's supposed to do. But, it's interesting that if you're building this offense where you're going to get rid of a guy in A.J. Brown, who's, an all-pro talent. Maybe he still is. Maybe he isn't, as cooked as some
maybe
people
he's
think.
A Pro Bowl talent, not old school Pro Bowl.
You're getting rid of a guy who potentially is a top 10 wide receiver and replacing him with 3 bodies that you can kind of spread the ball around. And that's just not something Jalen Hurts has ever done. So I think, from that perspective, it's a really interesting move if we're going to roll out week 1 with, 4 guys wide and, just see who can get open, because Jalen Hurts has never really been a quarterback who's had to look for 3, 4, 5 wide receivers, in a game.
Yeah, no, it's a great point. And look, I think that good on the Eagles for, challenging Jalen and trying to get the most out of him. I don't think that just because he hasn't done it means he can't do it. We've seen Jalen excel at things that we didn't see him excel at earlier in his career. We know he works hard and all that. And look, we don't know that he can do it. But I do think that if they can turn him into this, if he can do it, I mean, think about what a dangerous weapon he can become with them when you add the stuff he's already great at to that. Like it really, look, and I think for Jalen, I hope that Jalen can understand that that this is an opportunity, and I'm sure he does. I mean, he is, we know how driven he is and all that, but I do think that this is a bit of a show me. Obviously, we know the situation. We know that the articles and this, but I also think that if Jalen can look at it the right way, like this is an opportunity not just to cement himself here, but to make himself into he wants to be great. Like if he can do this thing, if he can learn to play football this way, added to what he's already done, like that's the thing that can carry him into the future to be one of the greats, So I just think it's such a fascinating situation we're in right now and we'll get to the AJ thing before we get out of here in a sec, but it's really, they are to your point, they're asking Jason Kelsey said when he was on the Pat McAfee show, he was like, and he said it authoritatively, he's like, they're going to do more under center. They're going to do blah, blah, blah. They're going and so I think it's going to be such a fascinating thing for us to see this guy who has accomplished so much already in Jalen Hurts at a young age at the highest of levels to have to kind of try something completely different. And also with a brand new, coordinator's never done it. There's so many little factors and the pressure of it all. It's one of the more fascinating Eagles seasons we've headed into. And obviously off season's still going, but in a long time from that perspective, Doc.
Yeah, it's just interesting, you don't want to say rebuild, but the way they've kind of retooled this offense and they're trying to kind of rebuild it around Jalen Hurts, maybe asking him to do more. And, the motivation of Jalen Hurts, I don't think it's ever been a question, right? Like the guy clearly wants to be great. And, maybe he is stubborn, but, as Jason Kelsey said, like, it's probably good for him. Yeah. Like he should have some ownership because it has been a revolving door at play caller, right?
Well, and to you look at the guys that he's and real quick, and to something Elliot always say, Jalen has had a lot of success doing things a certain way. Like you can understand where it might take a second to step back and say, oh, maybe I do actually need to do this. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and you look at some of the guys, and he's not necessarily in the category of like Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, but like he wants to be, right? He carries himself that way. And those guys, by year 7, 8, 9 of their career, they were running their own offense, right? Like how many of their, Josh McDaniels or Adam Gase or whoever it is, how many of their offensive coordinators went elsewhere? I was like, oh, just kidding. They actually were running the offense of the Hall of Fame quarterback. Not that Jalen Hurts is necessarily in that category yet, but I mean, at this point, and I think it was said a lot during the regular season almost as a negative, but like it is the Jalen Hurts offense, right? Like what we are going to see is what Jalen Hurts is capable of doing and willing to do. And I don't know. I look at what they've done with retooling this offensive coaching staff, bringing in not just Sean Manson, but Gerard Johnson and a couple other pieces. I look at how they're kind of retooling this wide receiver room.
Gizzard, the whole thing.
Yeah, Gizzard as well.
Gizzard.
It's Gizzard on this pod.
Right.
It's just it's fascinating because they did take a huge step back.
Sorry.
But they did take a huge step back in 2025, right? Like it wasn't like 2023 where the results weren't there, but it was mainly because their defense was terrible. Like you were 27th in points last year, and that's just not good enough when you have that kind of talent on offense. And maybe the offensive line rebounds because people are going to be healthier.
It can't be as bad, I don't think, just health wise.
But it's just fascinating. Like even looking at the Stoutland thing, the way they've kind of rebuilt this offense, for better or worse, I think it's going to be a lot of pressure and a lot of attention on Jalen Hurts. Because guess what? Like if the offense sucks a month into the season and AJ Brown isn't there, like no one's going to point to Dantavyon Wicks and say like, oh man, like this guy's killing us. No, it's going to be on the shoulders of Jalen Hurts if this offense
maybe Sean Mannion, those two. Yeah, Hurts first, Mannion second. I think you make so many great points there. And last thing I'll say, and then we'll get to the AJ part before we get out of here. But I do think that, like, first of all, the Mannion thing is a massive part of this, and that is and I'm excited about the bright young mind and all that. But he is really stepping into a pressure-filled situation for a lot of people, and they're giving him a lot of leeway. Like they are changing the offense here. But look, whether it works out or not is remain to be seen. But Howie Roseman and Jeffrey Lurie have had a lot of success by taking big swings and by being willing to hire someone you might not think they'd hire or fire someone when people think they wouldn't or whatever, and this is another one of those. I mean, how often you hear about, usually hear about coaching changes, and then you don't hear these high profile stories. Nationals, they're changing their offense with their Super Bowl winning quarterback and Kenny. This is a pretty unique situation. And I do think whether it works or not, I appreciate that they're still taking big swings and they're still willing to go with what they believe in, because they saw it too. We all watch that offense and they're like, this isn't going to work. It's not just players have to execute better, because they do, but we have to philosophically change what we do. And I appreciate that's a big swing, Tuck. And I appreciate that, Yeah.
The only question I would have is how involved Jalen Hurts has been in this decision-making process. Because if you're doing it for him and if you're changing it for him, is he sitting at home on the couch and saying like, oh, we brought this guy, that's interesting? Or has he been in lockstep with the front office and the coaching staff about kind of what they're doing? Because if you want to take ownership in the scheme and everything, that's great. But also, as Bill Parcells said, I can't cook the meal without buying the groceries.
Damn straight. Tell him, Bill. Okay. I didn't think you were
done. That was it.
Yeah,
no, that was it.
All right, last thing, and to end with it, the AJ of it all, I have at no point in this whole saga, and it's wild, Tucker, we did a poll on the morning show today asking, do you think AJ Brown will get traded? And 51% of people said yes, but 49% said no. I am surprised that there is still a large portion of Eagles fans who ultimately think they will hang on to him. I am 99% that AJ Brown will be traded. So for me, any move they make that kind of pushes the belief further down the road, like trading for receivers and whatnot, it doesn't, I'm just yeah, sure. Yeah, I think he's gone. But do you think for those 49% of people out there, who maybe are I don't know, do you think today is going to push people that way? Or do you think they're just kind of nope, they're just building up the room? And how sure are you that AJ Brown is gone? Because I feel like I'm sure. And I feel like a lot of the people I talk to are sure, but there's seemingly a large percentage of Eagles fans who think that, and that's the question. If how you can only get a third, will he trade him? Where are you at?
Yeah, I just think it moves it from 97% to 98%.
Sure.
It has felt like a foregone conclusion for a while. And listen, AJ Brown has been a great Eagle, right? Like they won the Super Bowl with him. He's put together a couple of the greatest wide receiver seasons we've ever seen in the franchise's history. Like, but at some point, whether you feel differently about, Diana Rossini now or like whatever the reporting is, even if you don't like it, there's enough smoke that there has to be this much fire, right? And the Eagles front office, from what Howie Roseman and Nick Sirianni and Jeff Lurie have all said in the last month, where they didn't necessarily come out and say, like, he's definitely going to be on the roster week 1, which if all of this was made up, you would 100% say that. At this point, I would be shocked if he came back. And I really think the question is, does he get traded in 2 weeks on draft night, or does he get traded on June 2nd to help the Eagles capitalize in 2027 and beyond? Like that, those are the only two options, I think. Like it truly is a matter of when and not if.
Yeah, it feels like I don't know. Like I know people have theorized about a handshake deal for after. Maybe, I don't know. It's certainly possible, or if there's a framework of a deal that's ready to go, but like risky, but maybe it's there. And look, it's all about relationships. Like, Howie's an important GM who isn't going anywhere. Like you don't want to piss Howie off by, going back on your word. Who knows? But I still think there's a real possibility he goes on draft night, just because it does make the most sense to capitalize on the moment and the teams wanting a player, this, that, whatever it is. But it's going to be fascinating. I'm with you. I'm still 99%. I would be floored if he's back. But I do think the most interesting part of the AJ thing is they keep adding receivers. If they draft on this, that, or whatever, like we'll never know.
They're telegraphing it.
Yeah, so
it's not a surprise.
It's just like at the end of the day, how he's going to get, I think, is so fascinating because he has, done all this bluster and stuff. Like at the end of the day, will he just take a second? If that's what it is. I'm fascinated. So
yeah, I don't know where it goes, but I would be shocked if we go to training camp at the end of July and he's still on the field.
Totally agree. All right, our final thought is we love you, Elliot. We miss you. Happy we could do this.
Have fun in Cape May.
Final thoughts, quick ones. Yeah, Cape May. I didn't want to give it out. I didn't want people mobbing him, but yeah, he's.
Go mob Elliot in Cape May. There's my final thought.
He'd love it. It'd be great. All right, everyone, have a great weekend, and if AJ's traded, we'll definitely be there. But until then, he's Tucker. I'm James.